Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, April the 11th. The time is 7 p.m. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town Council of the Town of Kensington. I would like to welcome all those who are visiting or listening from home, and the agenda and the documentation for tonight's meeting can be found on our website if you wish to look at it. It'll be there after the meeting as well. Welcome to all councillors, all are in attendance. Welcome as well to CAO Jeff Baker, Deputy Administrator Wendy McKinnon, Municipal Clerk Kim Casely, Police Chief Louis Sutherland, Kyle Reed with the Journal Pioneer, and we have a special guest tonight, journalism student from Holland College, the name of Morgan Campbell. Welcome to you all. And we also have a special presentation tonight from Jamie Thomas, who I'll introduce to you in a few minutes. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the land upon which we gather is the unceded Mi'kmaq territory and is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. Council, the agenda is before you. I trust you all got the additional piece of correspondence that was sent out, I think, Friday afternoon. So the agenda should cover that additional piece of correspondence. There's nothing else to add. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. So moved by Councillor Spencer, seconded by Councillor McCrae. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest on any of the topics that are before us? Hearing none, we'll move right on to our special presentation tonight. And we have with us Jamie Thomas, who is the Director of Culture and Tourism for Lennox Island First Nations. And she'll make a presentation tonight on the history and the path forward to reconciliation for the Mi'kmaq peoples. And Jamie is also a former president and chief of the Native Council of Prince Edward Island. So Jamie, we'll call you forward. We're going to put you over here. And you want to turn on the mic there, Jeff?
What's that?
Turn on the mic there, please. And we'll let you take over Mr. Baker's computer.
So, oh, perfect.
And it's on the television as well. So you can take that off, yes.
Perfect.
So the floor is yours. Thank you and welcome, and we look forward to it.
Okay, thanks. So I'm used to doing these presentations. I'm a little intimidated with the many people I know in this room. It's a little different. So thank you very much for having me. As was said, my name is Jamie Thomas. I'm the Director of Culture and Tourism for the Lennox Island First Nation. And I actually have a slideshow presentation that I would use when I go into, we do training with the RCMP in East Prince. So we've done sessions with all of their members. We do our sessions with anyone who's going through the Atlantic Police Academy, so whether they're going through into the sheriff's program or they're doing the policing program, corrections, or the conservation program. We do this presentation with them, but for the sake of time, because sometimes I talk a lot, I figure what I'll do is I'll just kind of go through the presentation a bit quicker, and I may skip over a little bit, but I can provide it for people if you would like to see. So basically what we do is we cover a number of areas. We talk about Mi'kmaq territory. We talk about the connection to the land in terms of Mi'kma'ki and what that looks like and what the districts look like. We talk about first contact in the treaties. We go into the Indian Act and the government department that's involved. We also talk about some common misconceptions. We talk about the creation of the reserve systems here in PEI and the Mi'kmaq connection to the church. We also go into residential schools and those who are involved. We talk about the Indian Day Schools, which is relatively newer. So you probably heard a lot more about residential schools than you would of Indian Day Schools. We get a little bit into spirituality and ceremonies. We talk about traditional values and then current issues and concerns. So generally when I do this presentation, if there's questions that people may have, please feel free to ask them at any point in time, because if you're anything like me, you may forget and then be like, oh, I wanted to ask that, because that's how I am too. So But like I said, I'm not going to go into all of this, but I will just let you know that the Mi'kmaq territory, of course, when we talk about the Mi'kmaq territory, it's called Mi'kma'ki. And so our territory basically covers New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, parts of Newfoundland, into the Gaspé in Quebec. There's a little area down in the States. So we have 7 districts. And if you look at that picture right there, the land of the Mi'kmaq, you'll notice that each of the areas is described. And so if you look, anybody's ever been to Cape Breton, we call that Unama'ki in Mi'kmaq, but our language is very descriptive. So in the past, we didn't actually have words for specific things. We would describe things. So Unama'ki is actually known as the land of fog. Hence, you've ever been there, you would know why. And then here in Abagwet, we're the land in the water, or cradled on the waves, as it's referred to now. And so that's just a little bit about our language and the districts that we cover. So when we talk about Mi'kmaq territory and your land acknowledgement, that would also be something similar to, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and different places like that. So I'm not going to get in too depth into the history of the connection to the land, other than to say Mi'kmaq people, of course, have been here for over 12,000 years. We've got archaeological evidence, especially in the area where I'm from, Lennox Island. Well, I'm born and raised in Kensington, I'll just let everybody know. But where I work in Lennox Island, I am actually part of the Lennox Island community. And so we have archaeological evidence in our areas that date back 12,000 years, of the Mi'kmaq. But it is to be recognized that we've been here since time immemorial. And so Mi'kmaq people, of course, traditionally and still today, we very much survive using our natural resources. So all of the land and resources that are available to us. So we would have used timber for our dwellings, animals for food, for hunting. We would have used them for basic tools, or in some cases we made games out of like the bones of a moose. So we didn't actually use every part of what we would use was used for something. We didn't discard anything. And of note, just so everybody knows, the Mi'kmaq people actually created hockey sticks. We created snowshoes and canoes. So, fun facts for your children. So this picture here is just a picture of Mi'kmaq territory, but what it also does is it kind of outlines all of the animals that you would have found throughout Mi'kmaq territory. And so, and the food and resources that we would have survived on. So of course, in PEI, we're very much shellfish people, because that's what we have to rely on as of right now. We don't actually have access to any large game. So in order for us to be able to access traditional food like moose and deer and those kinds of things, we have to go out of province into other Mi'kmaq territories. And then we access that food and bring it back for our elders and community members through hunting and fishing agreements that we have. And so lobster, of course, being one of the main providers here in PEI for us. So I'm not going to get into this one, but it just talks about the first contact. But what I really want to, just an interesting fact, because I'm all about fun facts, is traditionally the Mi'kmaq people, prior to contact with Europeans, we followed a 13 moon system as opposed to 12 months of the year. So our moon system followed the 28 days of a new moon. And so each of our moons, in terms of our descriptiveness of our language, each of the moons would actually tell you about what was going to happen. So if you look at the month of November, that was called the river freezing moon, because we knew in the month of November that the ice was going to start to form. If you look in January, that was when the birds started to shed their feathers. So each of our moons, as opposed to the calendar year, described something that was going to happen during that month. So it kind of prepared the Mi'kmaq for what was ahead. So, as you alluded to earlier, we did sign a number of peace and friendship treaties with the British European settlers, And all of those, the peace and friendship treaties were really about that. You know, the idea was that we were going to welcome people into the land, and we were going to live in peace and harmony, and we would allow for the British to, you know, do their thing, and we would do our thing, kind of thing. That didn't necessarily happen that way, but all of our agreements were signed, you know, with the intent that we were not giving up land, but we were going to live in peace and harmony with those who found our territory to be their home. So this is just a picture of what traditional living would have looked like back in the day. The Mi'kmaq people actually lived in wigwams. We didn't live in teepees. A lot of people think that. So our, as I said, natural resources, we used, you know, birch bark and different types of resources for our dwelling. And you could see in this picture, clothing. It was a source of heat. So when we would go moose hunting, we would use the hides for things like drums and different things. We would use the fur for clothing or for blankets and things like that to keep us warm. So all of the resources that we had access to were used in one way, shape, or form. So Lennox Island is actually the first community here in Prince Edward Island that was designated for the Mi'kmaq people. We do have a bit of a long history of access, or trying to access land. So when the British surveyors came in, they divided up the land, which is known as PEI now, into 67 lots. But they didn't actually identify a specific area of land for the Mi'kmaq, although we had lived in that specific area. And so we only actually got our land because the Aborigines Protection Society in London, England, bought that parcel of land for £400. We had made several attempts with support from other allies to have the land set aside, but it was always denied by the government, and so it was the Aborigines Protection Society that purchased the land on our behalf. Just going to keep going. That's a bit of the history. So as I said, Lennox Island was the first community here in Prince Edward Island. We represented all of the Mi'kmaq people throughout the province. However, in the 70s, there was a bit of a conflict in terms of the distance that folks who had made their homes or settled in Morel and Rocky Point and Scotchford. So essentially what was happening is they were finding it very difficult to be involved in our decision making. So they would have to travel distance so that they could vote, or they could be involved in meetings and those kinds of things. So they made a petition, or sorry, they actually held a referendum, and it was voted upon, and it was decided that they would branch off and create their own First Nations community. So currently in PEI, we have Lennox Island, and we have Abogwit. And Abogwit represents Rocky Point, Scotchford, and Morel. So it was in 1972 that they held their first election, and they they elected the first chief, who was Mrs. Margaret Bernard. So, of course, we have the Lennox Island First Nation. So Lennox Island is a custom band governed by one chief and 3 councillors. The political term lasts for a period of 3 years. So on June the 8th, 2019, as of that date, our current council consists of Chief Darlene Bernard, Richard Guimond is a councillor, Madeleine Sark is a councillor, and Wendell LeBeaube is a councillor. So we represent all of our community members on and off reserve from Lennox Island. We also have the Abogwit First Nation, and they're a custom code band as well. So they're governed by their one chief and 3 councillors. Their political term of office is actually 4 years. So current chief consists of Chief Roddy Gould Jr., or as most of us refer to him, Junior Gould. And then Sherry Bernard, Chris Jadis, and Jacob Jadis are the councillors in that community. So what's really interesting for people to be aware of is that we as First Nations people, or as a community, we have a piece of government legislation that basically tells us how we do things, and that's called the Indian Act. And so the Indian Act is essentially an assimilation policy that was intended to terminate the culture social, economic, and political distinctiveness of Aboriginal peoples by absorbing us into mainstream Canadian society. So the idea was that, the legislation would ensure that we did and didn't do certain things. So it was actually, it's race-based legislation, and in some cases, it limited the free movement of Indians and Indians out of the reserves. So it banned things like Sundance, potlucks, those kinds of things that were very significant to our culture. So sometimes when I do presentations, people will say to me, like, so I run a culture center, and I've had people come in and they say, "What do we call you?" And I say, "Jamie." But I know where they're coming from, right? Because you ever get stuck in a situation where you're just not sure. So I use language that kind of has been adopted through time and history. So Indian is essentially, people say, oh, we shouldn't use that term. But the reality is that we still have this piece of legislation called the Indian Act. And so it needs to be referenced. The term needs to be referenced because I'm speaking of the legislation. I also know that, throughout time, we've had terminology like Aboriginal. So at one point in time, the government had decided, well, we're going to call you Aboriginal people. And it was like this pan approach. So they wanted everybody to kind of fit within the box. Instead of the distinctions, Indian, Inuit, and Métis, they said, we're going to call you all Aboriginal. That didn't last very long. At one point in time, we were called Native because they said we were native to the land. And so my husband, personally, that's the term that he would prefer people call him, or that he refers to himself as Native. Most recently, we were using the term First Nation, and now they use the term Indigenous, which is the one that has been kind of solidified as a result of the UNDRIP and the United Nations. So Indigenous is a term that's being used quite often now. Most people, though, if you were to say, First Nation, if you were speaking to someone who was Mi'kmaq, then the term First Nation really looks at the true historic nation that we come from, that being the Mi'kmaq Nation. And so that would be the term that I would suggest you would use, is either First Nation or Indigenous, depending on who you're talking to. But that's a question that a lot of people are like, what do we do? So I just wanted to make sure that people understood why I was using the term Indian in talking about the Indian Act. So essentially it was introduced in 1876, and it was a consolidation of previous colonial legislation that aimed to eradicate First Nations culture in favor of assimilation into a Euro-Canadian society. It's been amended several times, most significantly 1951, and then again in 1985 with changes that mainly focused on removing discriminatory sections. So it is only relevant to First Nations people, or Indians as they're referred to in the Act. The Métis and Inuit have their own rules and regulations that they follow outside of the Indian Act. Then we got this guy. So if you remember, there was a lot of controversy in the city of Charlottetown when the John A. Macdonald statue was there, and there was a number of people who had painted him red, or they had put red handprints on him, or I think at one point in time someone maybe knocked him over. And people didn't necessarily understand where that was coming from. But a statement that John A. Macdonald had made was that the great aim of the legislation has been to do away with the tribal system and assimilate the Indian people in all respects with the other inhabitants of the Dominion as speedily as they are fit to see changed. So that was John A. Macdonald in 1887. And the reality is that it was John A. Macdonald that started to, or that enacted the legislation that forced our children to go to residential schools. And so that's part of the history that doesn't necessarily get talked about too much. We had this thing in our history called Indian agents. And so the Indian agents were Canadian government representatives on First Nation reserves between 1830 and in the 1960s. So often they worked in isolated communities outside of settler communities, and the Indian agents basically implemented government policy and enforced and administered the provisions of the Indian Act, and managed the day-to-day affairs of status Indians. So Indian agents would essentially were like the enforcers, right? So if you didn't follow the rules, the Indian agents had the ability to come in and take you to jail or take things away, or it was like you would be punished, and it was the Indian agents that would do that. Something that a lot of people don't know is that the RCMP were also a component of that enforcement. And so when we think about the relationship between the RCMP and Indigenous people and some of the things you see on the news, the RCMP played a role when it came to even the removal of our children from homes. And that's not something that's really talked about in our history either. And so it's just to bring those things to light. And if anybody has questions, you can ask them. Feel free, because I talk a lot, so. Yeah. So we did actually have Indian agents here in PEI, and they worked throughout the province, both on and off reserve. We also, the position of Indian agents no longer exists, of course, because First Nations communities manage their own affairs through modern band councils or self-government. We actually had this a pass system as well. So part of our history was that we weren't actually allowed to leave unless we had permission. So you had to access permission from an Indian agent or a representative so that you could leave the community to do things like visit your children or go to let's say you needed to go for some type of business. So you needed to actually get a pass that said that you were allowed to leave from such and such a date, and you were to conduct specific business, and when you would be returning, who you would be staying with, all of those things. So we had a pass system that we had to follow. The pass system wasn't necessarily as used as much here in PEI, but it was something that was noted. So then we talk about the Mi'kmaq connection to the church. And this is an interesting thing, because when we think about residential schools and how residential schools were administered, they were essentially administered by the churches in that system. However, the Mi'kmaq people and the French had such an alliance, and they brought, the theory of Catholicism. And so throughout time, the Catholic religion and the Mi'kmaq traditional ways were brought together in the form of religious practices. So the Mi'kmaq people still very strong in the Roman Catholic religion in some cases. I know in Lennox Island we have the St. Anne's Roman Catholic Church, which is owned by the community and not the diocese, but that has to do with the history and the relationship that we had with the church years and years and years ago. So I wanted to talk a little bit about residential school, and I think this is where this is really what has been driving a lot of folks to want to do something in terms of reconciliation. And our reality is that residential schools were government-sponsored religious schools. They were established, of course, to assimilate Indigenous children into regular mainstream society, as we would call it now. So they were first started in New France, and usually the first schools, were started in New France, and the term usually refers to the schools that are established after 1880s. So when we talk about residential schools, the majority of them are after 1880. The one thing that I will tell you is that anyone who went to a residential school from Prince Edward Island went to Shubenacadie, which is in Nova Scotia. The last residential school actually closed in 1996. So that was a federally run school. So just think about it. I graduated in 1997. And that's when the last state-run school was actually closed. So when you think about that, that's not that long ago that the school still existed. One of the things that, this is just a picture of what the Shubenacadie Residential School would have looked like. So when our people went into the school, they basically you were not able to speak the language. You weren't allowed to talk to anyone that was related to you or that you knew from your community. There was a separation. You were made to cut your hair, you were uniformed, and you were given a number because your identity was a number. From the stories that I've heard from residential school survivors, which they're not my stories, but some of the things that they've shared is that it was very institutionalized, and so they had to follow, strict patterns. There was time for everything, and there was many abuses that were endured during residential schools, whether they would have been physical, emotional, mental, or sexual abuses. They were horrifying, and so. One of the challenges that we have, of course, is the fact that residential schools have been part of our history for so long, but we didn't really start talking about them until May of last year, when 215 dead bodies were found in British Columbia. And then all of a sudden it became, an aha moment. And it was like, oh, that's a real thing. And they continue to find bodies as they search in other residential school sites. And so we have been working towards, reconciling with others. But sometimes what people don't realize is that some of our own people don't understand that they've been affected by residential schools. And so when you think about that, it can be very hard to create reconciliation when people don't realize why they're suffering. And I can personalize that. So in May, we lit a sacred fire in Lennox Island, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to have a place for people to come and instead of seeing, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, this is a form of healing for us. So it's a ceremony. So we had our sacred fire, and the first day was very publicized. So we had a lot of people show up. And the second day, but we also had talking circles, right? Which is that's where the healing kind of comes from. The second day we had a school, so that was okay. Things were going good. The third day, it was just us and our survivors and our support teams and people from the community. And my godchild came out and she said, Godma, just think about it. What if Nana never made it back? And I said, Kenzie, don't ever say that again. And she's like, no, but really, Godma, think about it. None of us would be here. And so I got so upset with her when she said that to me, and I didn't know why. So I went home that night and I started, my poor family, they couldn't even talk to me because I was just irate, but I didn't have a clue why. And then I realized that the next day we had our talking circle, and as the talking stick was coming to me, I started to cry. And I'm talking uncontrollable, you need more than 3 rolls of toilet paper to clean your face off kind of crying. And I didn't understand it. But then I realized that my father, his mother went to residential schools. And my grandmother, I want to say that, our relationship wasn't necessarily the greatest. And I feel as though it's because of her time in residential school and her inability to actually be a parent and to pass that down. And so when you think about it, in the residential school, there's no place for love. There's no place for affection. There's none of those things. And then we have these people who went to residential schools coming into our communities, becoming parents. And so they've never had parents to teach them how to do that. And so I feel as though that was the situation with my grandmother, not saying that, that I didn't have a great childhood and upbringing. I just think that I may have been the disconnect between how she understood love and her relationship with my father, because it wasn't, one that we would have with our children today, right? So there was a lot of substance abuse. So alcoholism is a big thing in our communities, because people don't know how to deal with their emotions. They don't know how to deal with the fact that this is their reality. And a lot of people don't understand that they've been impacted by residential schools. So that's something that people don't realize, is that the impacts have not yet been understood by some of our community members. So when we talk about reconciliation and healing, some of us aren't there yet. And so we really have to meet people where they're at when it comes to that. And then, of course, as I talked about earlier, we did have RCMP played a role in residential schools. And so there's a lot of work being done with the RCMP when it comes to relationships. And oftentimes we'll talk to the RCMP and they're like, well, it wasn't me. Well, I know that. It has nothing to do with you. It's the institution, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's about how do we ensure that we are all doing better outside of the structure of that negative image of the institution. And so it's really about, reconciliation is really about changing our mindset and doing better. And doing better in a way that we're working together, and it's true partnership, and it's not us and them, but it's meaningful partnership and meaningful work that's being done to do better. The other thing that I will tell you is that we did have an Indian Day School in Lennox Island. So if you look here, the Indian Day Schools essentially took over the residential schools. So the only difference was that the kids who went to day schools went home at night, and then they went back. But the day schools were very similar to residential schools in the fact that the idea was that they would assimilate our children into mainstream society. So there was no, culture, there was none of that type of activity in the day school. They also endured numerous abuses, and just recently there were some settlements that were agreed to by the federal government for survivors of Indian day schools. So that's kind of a new thing that is just not necessarily as out there as the residential schools have been. So the only other thing that I'll talk to you about a little bit is just religion and spirituality. So when you think of First Nations people, our connection to, although we do have a number of people who are connected very closely with the Catholic Church and other religions, a lot of us do things a different way. And so our connection to the Creator is through the use of our medicines and through our teachings. And so when I pray to the Creator, it's not going into a church and using that form, but I use my smudge and my eagle feather, and that's the way that I take care of myself in a good way, is to practice my culture and to make sure that I'm honoring our traditional ways by continuing to do that and teaching my children how to do that and those kinds of things. So. One of the folks that we used to work with, one of the elders that we used to work with, or we still work with him, but he quoted, he had heard this phrase, and so I thought it was really interesting, and he said, religion is for people who do not want to go to hell, but spirituality is for those of us who have already been there. And so I just kind of wanted to close on that, in terms of where we're at when it comes to healing and some of the things that we've been through. So that was Elder Noel Millier and Elsa Booktook. So when we talk about reconciliation and we talk about working together and we talk about those things, I think this community has started, by having these conversations, first of all, by having, the flag raised, those kinds of things. But it's really about education. And it's really about understanding that I don't want to call it a history, but what I want to call it is our truth. Because I think sometimes history gets wrapped up in, textbooks. But the reality is that we have an untold truth that people need to know about so that we can truly achieve reconciliation. And so one of the ways for us to do that is to continue conversations like this and to ask questions that need to be asked so that people understand, Some people think, well, if we do a smudging ceremony, then we've done it, right? But who eats dessert before they have the main course, right? And so when you think about it, it's about creating that awareness and that education before we get into the other things. So that's it in a nutshell. You guys got a 3-hour presentation in 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, you have done a great job of presenting a short synopsis of some of your history, some of your culture, some of your past. And I'm sure we're all moved a bit by it, just like we were moved by the finding of the graves back in, as you say, pretty near a year ago now. Going forward, I know we didn't get here in this position overnight.
No.
We're not going to get out of it overnight either, but just sitting down and listening and hearing some of the stories that you're telling and listening to how it affected people, I think is going to help the rest of us to start to, I don't know, acknowledge and figure out what role do we all have a role to play in this. We maybe we didn't do it, but it's up to us to get out of it now. And everybody in the world's got to start working together better, and we've got to start right here in PEI with all our own people. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do thank you for coming in and trying to shorten up a 3-hour presentation
Yeah.
too. We'll maybe
Can
have
be
to get you
difficult.
back again sometime. But if there's any questions, would you take a
Oh, yeah.
few questions? Council, do any of you have any questions? I have one.
Okay.
I've heard different times when you mentioned even in your presentation about an elder. What makes, how do you become an elder? How does a person become an elder in the Mi'kmaq people?
So
Is
I've
it
got,
age or something else?
well, I've gotten in trouble for this.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Of course, Rowan asked that question.
No, so traditionally, there are specific, I don't want to say qualifications, but there are things that you would look for in an elder. So an elder is somebody who holds our traditional knowledge, but also would never consider themselves to be an elder. You know, they're not going to give you advice, but they're full of wisdom and knowledge. And so there's kind of like, I don't want to say qualifications, but there's things we look for. So someone who is humble and someone who is, honest. And yes, it's the characteristics that we see. So someone who follows our 7 sacred teachings, right, would be considered to be an elder. Someone who follows our traditional ways. An elder would never say, well, I'm an elder, so that's it, right? So hence my getting in trouble, because sometimes we have people who hit a certain age and then all of a sudden they feel as though, well, I'm an elder now. Well, you are in a sense, but you're not necessarily a traditional elder. And so there's a difference between an elder and an older person, right? Because sometimes older people don't have the same characteristics as what we would see a traditional elder having. So what we've been doing, or what I've been seeing lately, is that we're also using traditional knowledge keepers when it comes to presentations or those kinds of things, or coming into the community to share information, because we have a lot of people in our communities who have great knowledge of our culture and our traditional ways and those kinds of things, but they don't necessarily have all of the characteristics that you would see in an elder. So we have traditional knowledge keepers. But it really depends on who you are. So there are some people who have aged into that certain category or bracket. But really, an elder is somebody that you seek out to help you through your own path, right? So I always tell people, elders will tell you different things, but it's up to you as to what you take from that. So someone may say, oh, what if you did this, or have you thought of that? And you take from them what you need, and then you just leave the rest, kind of thing. So there's so many elders in our communities. There's so many older people in our communities. There's knowledge keepers. So it's really a matter of personally figuring out who that person is that you trust to help you and help guide you along the way. So you've probably asked the most difficult question that there is to answer. I just want you to know.
Yeah, okay. Well, you have helped us to understand that.
Yeah.
It's not, obviously,
It's not just an age bracket.
It's just,
No.
there's a
So
lot
it's
more
not a
to it.
mentor. Would you put them
Essentially, yeah, because it's somebody who's lived, an elder is somebody who's lived the life, right? So who understands the values, who understands the culture, who understands the tradition, but who's never going to tell you have to do it this way. Like, so essentially they are mentors and they're our knowledge keepers. So they're the ones that we want to pass on our ways. Like, and the thing about the Mi'kmaq people is we were very oral, right? So our history has not been well documented. And so we really rely on the elders and our story keepers to continue to share with us so that we can teach our future generations. I mean, we're getting a lot better at it, you know, in terms of making sure that we're capturing things the proper way, but traditionally we didn't, so.
Well, and the more you do, the more we get to know and understand
That's
as well.
right.
Maybe we become better at understanding it as well.
Yeah.
Any questions? Councillor McCray?
So the last school closed in 1996, correct?
Well, it was 1996, and then there was a school that was run 1 year on its own, so it was in 1997. It was called Growler Hall, and it was in the Northwest Territories.
So is there any living members that are teaching the children, you know, this happened because, not because you were bad or not because you deserved it or not, to make them feel that worthy, like more worthy again and more acceptable in the community?
Yeah, so we do still have living survivors in our communities who went to the school in Shubenacadie. And so they're not necessarily, what we have to remember is that a lot of them have gone through like a healing journey, right? So when you go through that much trauma, there's healing that needs to take place, of course, right? And so some of them are well advanced in their healing journey. Some of them aren't even able to talk about it. But what we've tried to do is to provide as much support to those individuals so that they can have conversations with people. And we've surrounded ourselves with people who kind of are like little sponges like me, you know, and so we are hearing their stories and we're listening to them and we're creating opportunities. So like an example would be on Orange T-shirt Day, which is in September. We actually did some work with some of the schools in Summerside and Western PEI. We were scheduled to come to Kensington, but there was just a conflict in agendas during the time frame that we were coming. But basically what we did was we took a survivor and we let the kids ask them questions. And so that created an opportunity for them to to just say what was it like, you know, what did you do, or how did it? And the survivors had a chance to talk to the students and give them kind of a lived experience. But then we also had folks like myself to address the technical side of schools, right? Because each of our survivors has their own story to tell, and it's not my story. So I can't tell it. But I can talk about the generalization of the schools and what took place and things that we've heard through like the commission and the reports and those kinds of things. So we've been creating opportunities like that. And the other thing that we're trying to focus on is the fact that we have people like myself who are intergenerational survivors of residential school, right? Like we deal with the impacts, and we have people who don't even realize that they do that their parents were residential school survivors. So maybe that's why this is happening or that is happening, you know, or their grandparents or whatever. So we are trying to really help people understand. We did a survey because I got a little upset because they were supposed to, a couple years ago, each school was supposed to do something on Orange T-shirt Day. And one of my coworkers came in and said, well, my kids' school didn't do anything. And then another coworker came in and said, well, my kids' school didn't do anything. So I called every school in PEI to find out what they did. And I did it because I was upset at the fact that they hadn't done anything, but it was a really great opportunity to understand why they didn't do things. And so a lot of the folks that we talked about were like, you know, they were like nervous because what if we're not doing justice on this issue? Maybe I don't have the empathy to talk about it. So we realized that there was some work that we could do in partnership with the schools to help people understand the way they needed to. So there's still a lot of work that has to be done when it comes to our education system as well, but we're trying to work on it. But like I said, there's only so many resources. We only have so many people who are in positions to even be able to talk about this without becoming emotional or who are willing to talk about it. So, but we're working on it.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Jamie. I think we better give it on to our
Yeah.
business portion of the meeting. We do
I
thank you for
can
coming in.
talk.
And we may have to get you back again and try to get the other 2 hours of the presentation.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
But we do thank you for coming in, and you are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
I have a 9-year-old who doesn't understand why I left.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch. And I suspect if we decided we wanted to go up and have a tour of Levittown, something like that,
yes.
if I get in touch with you, we can probably arrange something.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We could do a field trip is what I like
Perfect.
to call them.
All right,
And
great.
if anybody's interested in the presentation, just let me know. We can email it to you.
All right, yes.
Okay.
Is it on that?
Yeah, do you want to keep?
Well, if I can just, because I
It's
guess
yours
it's one,
anyway.
yeah. I can send this to everybody then?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you. I'm just going to go into your office to get my kit bag.
Yes, you go right ahead.
Is that your mask, Jamie?
Oh, yeah.
That be yours?
It's hot in here.
I know, it is.
Thanks
It
very
is
much
warm,
for that.
isn't it? All right, everyone. We are back onto the agenda, and the next item on the agenda is the adoption of the previous meeting minutes. The minutes are before you for, I'm just trying to get caught up here, for March the 28th. How come it says, oh, there should be for March the 14th first. I think I closed it. The minutes of March the 14th, are there any errors or omissions in the minutes of March the 14th, Council? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes of March the 14th. So moved by Deputy Mayor Pickering, seconded by Councillor Toombs. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is the minutes of March the 28th. Those minutes are before you. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes of March the 28th? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the meeting minutes. So moved by Deputy Mayor Pickering, seconded by Councillor Spencer. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is business arising out of the minutes. First, minutes of March the 14th. Any business arising out of those minutes? Hearing none. Any business arising out of the minutes of March the 28th? Hearing none, we'll move right along to the reports. The first report is the Chief Administrative Officer's report. That report is before you. It's been reviewed by Committee of Council. Any questions on any of the information that is in the CAO's report? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the report for March 2022 as presented. So moved by Councillor McRae, seconded by Councillor Gallant. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is the Fire Department statistical report. That report is before you. Are there any questions on the Fire Department statistical report? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the Fire Department statistical report to the end of February. So moved by, there was a hand up over here, it was Councillor Spencer, moved, seconded by Councillor Toombs. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Police Department statistical report is before you. Any questions on the Police Department statistical report? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the report as presented. So moved by Councillor Toombs, seconded by Councillor Spencer. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Chief, you're here. Is there anything you wish to say to Council before you take off?
Not really. I just wanted to let you guys know that we're going to try and do the fishing derby, and we're headed to do the bicycle rodeo this year, get those two major things back on track for us.
Good.
So we're looking forward to that. As you know, we've been very busy this month, lots of issues, and I've got to do some problems, so we're going to deal with those, and that's about it.
All right, thank you very much.
The new car should be here this week.
Okay, good.
Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Night, Chief.
Yeah, good night.
Okay, the next item is the development permit summary report. That report is before you. As you can see, we have some information. This was not presented at Committee of Council. So are there any questions on the information that is before you on the development permit summary to the end of April, or to April to date? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the summary, or the development permit summary report to April to date. So moved by Councillor Toombs, seconded by Councillor Spencer. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. The bills list are before you. The bills for the town. Any questions on any of the bills that are before you for the, start with the town of Kensington? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the bills for the month of, what month are we into on that? Is that March? February? February in the amount of $202,624.29. So moved by Councillor Mann, seconded by Deputy Mayor Pickering. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Further, the bills for capital projects in the amount of $378,423.61. Any questions? I would entertain a motion to pay those. So moved by Councillor Mann, seconded by Councillor McCrae. Was Councillor Spencer, pardon me. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. The bills for water and sewer utility are before you. Any questions on the bills for water and sewer utility? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt and pay the bills for the month in the amount of $17,641.99. So moved by Councillor McCrae, seconded by Councillor Toombs. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. The summary income statement is before you. Council, any questions on the summary income statement? Summary income statement is to the end of February. I would entertain a motion to adopt the summary income statement. So moved by Councillor Spencer, or Councillor Mann, pardon me, seconded by Councillor Glant. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Okay, the Credit Union Center report is before you. Any questions on the Credit Union Center report? Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not so much a question on the report itself, but has there been a resolution with the application we did with the province? Because there's a lot of rumors floating around the rink the last 2 weeks. So.
There's nothing concrete that we're aware of as of yet. I know it's still in discussions, but
Okay.
I'm not even sure where the rumor's coming from, because was it?
I'm in the last 2 weeks I'm in question every time I go in the rink about
Which application
the
again?
one for like 1.6 million.
Yeah, there's nothing, no resolution on that as yet.
Okay.
It's probably because we had it on our capital project list subject to approval, but
Okay.
no, there's nothing concrete as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, Council? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt the report to the end of February. So moved by Deputy Mayor Pickering, seconded by Councillor Spencer. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. The next report is the Mayor's report. Council, that report is before you. Do you have any questions on it? Just, I think we do have some things taking place on Earth Day, and we have the Town Cleanup Day. I'm suggesting we do it on May the 14th. I trust Council is in agreement with that. I gave you a copy of the Year of the Garden proclamation. So if there's no questions, I would entertain a motion to adopt it as presented. Oh, now, I think Councillor Toombs got his hand up first, so moved by Councillor Toombs, second by Councillor Spencer, I believe. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Councillor Mann, do you have anything to report from the Federation of the Prince Edward Island Municipalities?
Well, yeah, we had a big meeting last time. You should have seen the agenda package. It was like an inch thick. But yeah, so in that meeting, we adopted the budget. We approved the location for the AGM. And the big part of it was all the approving all the MUE agreements and everything for all the programs they're working on. So they approved the elected officials training program, the one through Holland College, the municipal infrastructure program, the financial management program, and they also did the Canwell Funding She Leads program. We did finalized all the approved all the agreements for those with the corresponding agencies, and we also had a lengthy discussion on municipal water testing. So.
Oh, good.
So,
No
so
resolutions or anything, just...
Well, just, yeah, it was a lengthy discussion, and the Federation is going to be asking the province why municipalities were not included in there, or at least why rural municipalities weren't included, because rural customers got their water tested for free, so.
All right. Anything further, Councillor Mann?
No, that was the lengthy meeting.
Okay. Any questions of Councillor Mann? Hearing none, we'll move right along to the Heart of PEI Initiative Report. Deputy Mayor Pickering.
Thank you. We're kind of closing up our past year, so we came in budget, what we had set out to do. We'd like to thank the town for contributing to the storyboard, so we thank you for that. And now we're just working on wrapping up everything, and we'll be doing some unveilings of our art installations. So we have 3 art installations, 2 being outside of Kensington, and 1 is going to be inside Kensington on a property business, which I can't tell you yet because it's going to be a surprise, but it'll be exciting to see. And with that, when we do those unveilings, we'll be doing the storyboard at the same time. So we'll definitely let town know and invite you to that special time. And we also have a video and a song that was created by the Smith-Caseley family. It's like a jingle tourism video and song about the Heart of PEI. So we haven't launched that yet on our social media pages, but when we do, we will let you all know and ask you to share it. It's really good. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning singing it one day. It's great.
Well, that's good.
It was stuck in my head.
Well, that's good. Great. Well, we look forward to hearing
So yeah,
it.
we're excited to start launching all these things in the next few weeks.
All right. Any questions of Deputy Mayor Pickering? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Kensington Area Chamber of Commerce report. Councillor McCrae, do you have anything to report?
Thank you. May the 12th is the President's Dinner, and it's casino night. And I was asked to help out with it since I was involved in a casino event before with the credit union. So I said I would, but now that I'm going for surgery on Thursday, I'm not sure if I'm going to be available. But I'll help from home. So it's May the 12th. The tickets are $50 each, and it sounds like a really fun night. It's going to be out in Emerald, and it's catered by Bev
Campbell.
And what else did I have here? Golf tournament is Wednesday, July the 27th. Shotgun start at 1 at Anderson's Creek, so mark your calendars, boys, because I'm sure you would like to go. Right, Mr. Gillian? And the next meeting is April the 20th at 8:30 in the boardroom. So I probably will not be able to attend that meeting, but I will get in touch with Julie just to make sure and find out if there's anything I need to report back to you.
All right, great, thank you.
Okay.
And we do have an invitation or a letter from the chamber just come in today that we'll review, which has to do with the President's Dinner or Casino Night, so we'll deal with that in Committee of Council. All right, any questions of Councillor McCrae? Hearing none, Counselor Glant, PEI 55-plus games. Do you have anything to report? Oh, I think you hit the wrong button.
No buttons, nothing's working.
There you're on. No, it's not on. There you are.
Thank you. 55-plus games. We had a meeting back a few weeks ago, I guess probably 3 weeks ago now, with the committee, or with the board of directors. And we've since been putting feelers out there to get some volunteers. We had it advertised on our website and spreading the word. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock here at the town hall for all those who are interested, and hopefully we'll have some volunteers show up. We have been putting feelers out there and haven't really called anybody, but have talked to several people about the possibility of them volunteering. In the meantime, the 55-plus games executive were wanting the 55-plus games on September 19th through the 24th, I think it was. Anyway, I got in contact with them and wondered if we couldn't move it up till September 12th to the 19th. I figured, in my personal opinion, as well as a few other people that we had talked to, as well as my co-chair, Cindy, feels that you're getting pretty late into the fall when you get up, into the 19th and on. So we figured if we could have it on the 12th until the 19th, that would hopefully weather would be good, as well as the days start to get shorter then as well. So we're hoping that they would agree to that. And I just received an email back from them this afternoon. They had a board meeting this morning and they discussed the possibilities of changing those dates. And they have agreed to our proposed dates, so the games would be the week of September the 12th.
What are they, for 4 days, 5 days?
No, they go Monday to Saturday. And we've discussed a number of events and or sports that would take place. Nothing's been decided on that yet. So hopefully tomorrow night we'll get started on some of that. They also sent back some other possible sporting events that they talked about that we might want to try to add or look at adding. The only other thing they said today is now they want a formal letter from the town of Kensington indicating to them that we are committed to the games for Monday, September 12th through the 19th, I guess it is. So they need a formal letter from the town saying that we're committed to the games, and don't say if it has to be signed. I assume, Mr. Mayor, we could write a letter and then you could sign it and I could sign it, or whoever, I guess.
We'll get that letter done up. So who does it go to?
Well, we could send it off to Victoria Laird, the executive director. She's the
Okay.
executive director of the 55-plus games and the board of directors, so we could address it to her and the board of directors.
And just basically confirming that we will be the sponsor for the 55-plus.
Confirming that we will host the games,
Yep.
yeah.
We'll have that looked after.
And what else do I got here? Letter of commitment. I guess that's all right at the moment. Then I think we've already spoke to both you and Mr. Baker regarding the setting up the account, so we'll have to do that as well through the town.
Yeah.
And I've also spoken with, I think, Wendy a couple of times. We're hoping to hire a student come the 1st of May to work with the 55-plus games for the summer. And I did have contact from at least one student already that's interested in the job, so
Okay.
I'm not sure where that's at right now as far as the application goes, but we can check on that. So that's basically it for the time being until after tomorrow night's meeting.
All right. Any questions of Councillor Glant? Council? All right, very good. We'll move right along to new business. The first item of new business is request for decision number 15, which is the development permit application for 28 Pleasant Street. That request for decision is before you. Any questions, clarification needed on the information that is before you, Council? Hearing none, who would like to read into the record the resolution? Councillor Toombs?
Be it resolved that Kensington Town Council approve a development permit application for Sheldon Stewart and Mike James for the construction of a 12-unit row-style multi-unit dwelling at 28 Pleasant Street, PID number 80119, subject to full compliance with the town's development control bylaw and all other applicable municipal, provincial, and federal legislation and regulations.
Thank you, Councillor Toombs. Do we have a seconder for that resolution? Seconded by Councillor Spencer. Any discussion, Council? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is request for, just one moment, next is a request for decision number 16, which is the Town of Kensington procurement policy, amended from what we discussed in Committee of Council. Any questions on the policy, Council? Then who would like to read into the record the resolution? Councillor Glant?
Be it resolved that the Town of Kensington procurement policy.
Do you want to turn your mic on there?
Be it resolved that the Town of Kensington procurement policy number 01-103-10 be hereby formally adopted as amended effective April 11th, 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Glant. Do we have a seconder for that resolution? Seconded by Councillor Toombs. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is request for decision number 17, which is the appointment of development officers for the Town of Kensington. We have never formally appointed development officers, and this is setting things up the way they probably should be set up. Any questions on the information that's before you, Council? Councillor Mann?
I'm just wondering, do you, in this thing, do you actually have the name of the person, or do you just have the name of the position?
Council, we'll let Mr. Baker answer that question.
Thank you, Your Worship. The bylaw states that Town Council shall appoint a development officer for the purpose of administering the bylaw. So I would anticipate you want to appoint people by name, yep, as opposed to the position. Yep.
Any other, is that satisfactory, Councillor Mann?
Yeah, I was just concerned if you, every time there's an employment change, if you had to go back and redo it or not, you know, that kind of thing, so.
Right. Maybe Mr. Baker, do you want to address that? You would go back and change. Yeah, the plan would be that when that does happen, we actually change the names. Any other questions, Council? Hearing none, who would like to read into the record the resolution? Councillor Spencer.
Be it resolved that CAO Jeff Baker, municipal clerk assistant to the CAO Kim Paisley, be formally appointed as development.
Oh, yes. You want to start over again? Sorry
Sorry, Your
about
Worship. Be it resolved that CAO Jeff Baker and municipal clerk assistant to the CAO Kim Paisley be formally appointed as development officers for the Town of Kensington to administer the Town of Kensington zoning and subdivision control development bylaw, effective immediately.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Do we have a seconder for that resolution? Seconded by Councillor Glant. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. That is all of the request for decisions, all the new business except other matters. I'll just want to bring a few other matters that I had to bring to your attention. On May the 1st, there is a basic emergency management course being held in Charlottetown for anybody in staff or anybody on council who has not already had that course. It's a good idea to take it. And if you haven't had it, by all means, let us know. We'd certainly be pleased to register you. The second item I had was just a reminder that the Federation of PEI Municipalities AGM meeting April 25th, as Councillor Mann had mentioned, and we need to determine who is going to be in attendance, who can go. That's on a Monday, so because we need to register everybody right away. And Mrs. McKinnon, perhaps you can put myself down. I think Mr. Baker's going. You're probably going, are you? I'm not sure if Kim's going or not. Anybody from council? Ready? Councillor Mann will be there. we better make sure he's registered since he's on the board. Councillor Glant, are you going?
What's the deadline for registration? I forget.
Do you remember what the deadline is?
I do.
We'll check that out. You can let us know as soon as you can. Anybody else going to be able to attend? I suppose you're going to be in the hospital there, Councillor McCrae. Well, we wish you well on your operation. You won't be able to, and all right, then we'll at least have some representation there. All right. The other thing is Chief Sutherland has organized the Family Violence Walk on May the 12th from Town Hall, starting at 1 o'clock. There's the mini grants this year have been increased from $100 to $200, so that gives them a little more money to deal with. I believe, Deputy Mayor Pickering, I think you're looking after some of the food.
Sure, yeah.
And that's also what you wear Purple Day, so you can wear purple ribbons. I don't know if we have any in stock now or not. We had them. I'm not sure if we have any more around or not, but hopefully we have some. May the 12th. The other thing I wanted to just give an update. I did get a letter from an update on the LaToya Martin Young family that had the fire here in Kensington, and Peggy Miles had reached out to them, and she sent a reply. LaToya sent a reply, and I thought I'd read that into the record to everybody. Hi, Peggy. Thank you so much for all your help. To Mayor Casely, we can't express the level of gratitude we have for you and the town of Kensington. Without you, we don't know where we would have been, most likely probably on a flight back to the Bahamas. Kensington is our new home, and we don't feel comfortable nowhere else. My family and I thank you so much, and as soon as we can, we'd be willing to pour back into the community, assist with volunteering, community outreach programs, or whatever we can help with. We would be happy to do so. Thanks again for the entire team and the town of Kensington. God bless you. So they were very appreciative of all the support they got from the town of Kensington and the residents outside the area. They are working on trying to get back sooner rather than later, and they have some options and possibilities in the works, but we don't have anything firm to report as of yet. The other thing I wanted to mention to everyone was that this afternoon, or this morning, we had Minister Hutchings. She is the rural, why can I not open this up? She is the Minister of Rural Economic Development for the Government of Canada, and we had her here this morning along with our MP Heath MacDonald, as well as 6 other in her entourage. We did do a tour of the town. We took her around we took her all over the place. Gave her a good tour of Kensington. She was quite impressed with Kensington and quite pleased to see some of the success we've had with some of the federal money that has come down to the island and to Prince Edward Island and to town of Kensington specifically, such as the business park, the water and sewer upgrades, the upgrades to the waste treatment center, and the upgrades to the well field. So we did show her all those areas plus some of the other items we have in town. So she was quite impressed, and it was nice to have them here. And the question she asked is, has there ever been a cabinet minister visit town from the federal government? And within our knowledge, we didn't know of any. So she said, well, I'm the first then. And we said, yes, we're pleased to have you. We did have MPs here before, or our regular, but she mentioned any of the other cabinet ministers. So it was nice to have her here. She was here to make an announcement in Borden, and it was, I believe it was on EV infrastructure. The federal government is going around waving the flag on their budget and the EV infrastructure program. We're not sure the specifics on that. I think that'll come out more specifically after the budget is passed, and we'll have a better idea of what is involved. Those are all of the items I had as other matters. Council, do you have other matters? Councillor Glant?
Just, I had a few residents, and I brought it to the attention of Mr. Baker the other day as well. I said I would bring it up at the meeting tonight, just regarding tidying up around sidewalks and so on in front of properties where maybe there's some damage. And in particular, some out Broadway Street, North, I think they said there was some people out there that were wondering about it, and there's a couple other areas in town. So just want to remind you about that, and hopefully our staff will get a chance to take a drive around and take a look where some people can't, maybe, some people fix their own, but in some cases, some people are unable to fix them, so if they could do that, it'd be great.
Yeah, I think we do that every year, do we not, Mr. Baker? Yeah. And as soon as the weather warms up and the dries up some, there is one other item that I want to I can mention that. This, we did receive this afternoon as of 3:07, report that Carnan Briggs are planning to start the storm sewer installation on Barrett Street on Tuesday, April the 19th. That's a week from tomorrow. So that program or project is moving forward, and they're probably down doing, so they may be down doing some measurements and checking some things out even this week as we speak. So just wanted to let everybody know that is taking place, and if you see activity down there, that's positive. Any other matters? Deputy Mayor Pickering.
Not really a matter, but I just want to thank you for arranging to have Jamie come in and speak tonight, because I felt it was very informative and very worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. I guess you didn't have your mic on there, but.
I did.
Oh, did you? Okay, good. No, I think it's good that we do get a little more education. We all need it, whether we like it or not. We might not like to hear some of the stuff, but it's better to hear it and be able to move forward. So thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Pickering. Any other comments or other matters, Council? Hearing none, we'll move right on to correspondence. The first item of correspondence is a thank you letter from MP Peter Julian, who had requested our support in endorsing Bill C-229, which is the anti-hate bill, and he's just thanking us for the support and asking us to, if we want to reach out to our local MPs, by all means do so. And we did send a copy of that resolution that we made, not only to him, but we sent it to our MP, Heath MacDonald. We sent it to the Prime Minister. Who else? Mr. Baker, was that all? Memory eludes us right now. We might have sent it to somebody else, but we at least sent it to those people. The other piece of correspondence is, it came out separate, which is the one from the Kensington Area Chamber of Commerce, which has to do with what's Councillor McCrae had mentioned, the President's Dinner or the Casino Night, which is combined to the same this year. And that is taking place on Thursday, May the 12th. Tickets on that are $50 each, so we'll bring that up. Actually, I didn't have that on, I was going to bring that up in Committee of Council, but we'll talk about it now since it's here. So we'll let Mrs. McKinnon know who's able to attend. Yes, you're a yes. Deputy Mayor Pickering, you can put her down, you can put me down. Anybody else in council that are aware? You may be, if you're out of the, back in.
It's only day surgery.
Yeah. Oh, you'll be, May the 12th, May the 12th. You'll be back in, yeah, you'll be playing baseball. Anybody else, council? It's at 7 o'clock, I believe, in the evening, so 7 to 9:30. May the 12th, it's a Thursday. So if you can let Mrs. McKinnon know so she can buy the tickets. And the other item of correspondence is one that I received on April the 8th, a request from Craig Walsh on April the 8th, which is looking for some financial support. He had made a request back in, we went back and checked the records, I think it was back in 2017, something like that. And at that point in time, council wanted a little more information as to what specifically what the money was going to, what some of the costs were. So he did provide some information this time. The cost of clothing and taxes, and they were looking for a $2,000 donation. Anyway, council, the information is before you. What are your thoughts? Councillor Glant.
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly respect the fact what they're trying to do here, as to bring a men's soccer team back to the Kensington area, where there's been many good years of senior soccer in Kensington over the past number of years, up until, recently. And as I said, I respect the fact what they're trying to do, but I personally feel, as a councillor and as a representing the taxpayers of Kensington, that we can't get into handing out money to a men's soccer team for support. I just feel it's not something we should be doing, and I couldn't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Glant. Just to let everybody know, we have supported teams in the past. We've supported the hockey teams, both the Vipers and the Wild, by sponsoring shirts. We've paid $750, I think we've done.
We do 700.
So we have done that in the past, Councillor Glant. And I think the first request came when you were involved with the Wild, when we supported the team. So go ahead, Councillor Glant.
Yeah. Yes, Your Worship, I understand that, and I don't have a problem with a sweater sponsor or something to that nature. But this here is basically sponsoring the whole team, and adults, as men and women, they go out and they pay $1,500 a year to play golf and softball and recreational hockey and so on and so forth. So I feel that these folks should be quite capable of paying their own way as far as registration and that sort of thing goes. I have no problem sponsoring a sweater sponsor or something like that, but I don't support $2,000.
Yeah. No, and that's not what I'm asking, not what I'm saying. We did, back in 2017, we did respond to them that we might be willing to go up to $750 if they gave us more detailed information, because that's the figure that we'd been using for sponsoring the Wild and the Vipers. So we kind of put them in the same boat. So that's the information before you, just so we have all the information. We may not want to sponsor the whole amount, and if we went back with a lesser amount and said this is what we're prepared to do, they may decide to go forward or not go forward, but at least we've answered the question. So, Council? Councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would agree with Councillor Gallant. I think that we'd be opening up a can of worms there too, with multiple men's rec league hockey teams, that each team would feel that they would be able to approach us, and the baseball men's league too. We could have all those teams come and ask for new uniforms and whatnot.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Deputy Mayor Pickering.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the past, how much money have we contributed to pickleball or bought things for?
Probably in the range of $500 or $600, maybe even more than that. We've just bought nets, and we bought wind nets. So I'm not even sure. We're probably, when we start to total it all up over the past while, we're probably in the $3,000, $4,000, probably $3,000 to $4,000 in the last 5 years. So at least, so we have. It's not, we're not starting something new. We've been doing it, and we've been doing it since we first sponsored the Wild. When the first request came in for the Wild, we started sponsoring them. So this is not something new. We've been doing it for many years now. So. Yes, Deputy Mayor Pickering.
And the team, it's 25 people on a soccer team. I don't know much about soccer, but is that for one team? Or are they like part of a league? Like, is it a senior men's rec league that's across the island that they'll be going outside, or are they going to be creating two teams and just playing against themselves?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that. I think they have 25 interested guys for a team in the Kensington area, so I don't even know how many they need on a team to play. Councillor Glant, Deputy?
No, I thought Ivan might know the answer.
No.
Well, you don't need 25 on a team for a soccer team. You don't need 25 players. I suppose you could if you wanted to, but you only have 10 players on the field at a time. Most teams usually carry 10 to 15 or 12 to 15 players. I don't know what the exact number is. I guess it's up to the teams. There may be a league. If they're in a league, there may be a number that they have to hold, just like hockey. You're only allowed 21 or so on the team. But normally you only need 10 to field a team and move on from there. But And I agree, Mr. Mayor, you did, we have sponsored, and I think it's an obligation of town council to support recreation in the town of Kensington, such as facilities for maybe nets for tennis and pickleball and a skateboard park and that sort of stuff, or an area for a skateboard park and maybe some equipment. I think we have an obligation to do that sort of thing. But as far as sponsoring a team, and as I said earlier, I have no problem sponsoring if they have a Kensington senior soccer team going. I have no problem putting out, a $750 sponsor or $500 sponsor towards if they wanted to put our name on a uniform, or if they just wanted to recognize us as buying balls for their team, or whatever the case might be. But I don't agree on sponsoring them for any more than that.
And I agree, and I'd be along those same lines, but anyway, I don't get to vote. Deputy Mayor Pickering.
So, let's go back to pickleball, just because I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Do we own that equipment that we've sponsored, or who is the ownership of all that?
Well, they own it. We don't.
So
look
it's
after
like
it.
a sponsorship that we've given them?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I guess I would go ahead and I would say I would like to support them in some manner. When I first read it, I automatically went to no, I don't think so, and then I thought of pickleball. So I would agree with sponsoring like the equipment that they need to play, but I don't necessarily agree with giving them money to give themselves outfits to play. I think that's something that they should be able to, as grown men, take on themselves. So I would motion $400 donation.
All right, is there a second for that, or is there more discussion? Oh, seconded by Councilor McCray. Is there any discussion, council? Any further discussion? So your motion was to, we're not saying specific, we're just saying an amount of $400.
Yeah.
Thank you. We wouldn't specify what they
No.
use it for. Okay. We're not requiring them to put our name on the jersey.
No, I don't want to own anything at the end of the day.
No, we don't own anything.
Yeah, I
We
know.
don't own anything with the Wild or the Vipers or anything like
Exactly.
that. We just pay to have our name on the jacket or on the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Oh, thank you, council. The next item, I think, there's one other item, which is, I think this went out this afternoon maybe, or it's the Relay for Life. Did you all get that? It went out, I think it went out, it just came in today. So it's the request from the Relay for Life at Kensington Intermediate Senior High, looking for a donation for their Relay for Life, and they have a fundraising goal of $12,000. It's on June the 3rd that they'll be doing their relay at the school. And last year, for your information, last year we made a donation of $1,000 to the cause last year. Council? Was that a move? Oh,
Yes, I'd make a motion for $1,000 again this year.
okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for that resolution? Seconded by Councillor Toombs. Moved by Councillor Spencer.
No, I'm just looking, I didn't get it.
Oh. Did the rest of you got it?
Yeah, I got
It only went to council. We'll get you a copy, Mr. Baker. What?
CAO got it.
What?
I see that looks like he got it. If I'm looking at the correct one, yeah.
Councillor Glant, did you have a,
I agree with it, but I'm just curious, was the Relay for Life, had it stopped here in Kensington for a period of time?
yes.
Yeah, and it's just, so this is the first year back, is there?
Yeah, there used to be a formal Relay for Life that went, 24 hours a day, I think, and then it went down to 12 hours a day or something like that. And eventually they moved it to Summerside. So now the schools, I don't even know if it even takes place formally in Summerside anymore. So now the schools are all doing their own fundraising, and that's where each community seems to be getting involved in it, and the school is involved in it as well. Any other questions, council? All right, we have a motion before council to make a donation of $1,000 to the Relay for Life for Kensington Intermediate Senior High. All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, council. There is no committee of the whole tonight. Kyle, we're not going to be able to see us after. All right, there's nothing else to come before this meeting, so I'd like to thank all those who may be watching from home. Thank you for joining us, and We will now call for, our next meeting, by the way, is going to be on May the 9th at 7 o'clock, if you wish to join us. And I would now entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Counselor